I think it's a critical component because, members of the military community have so many what we call soft skills. My boss called them power skills. I love that term because it's things that can't necessarily be taught. It's leadership skills. It's being able to work in a team, being able to work with a diverse group of people that have all kinds of backgrounds and be able to sit down and problem solve together. Being able to come in and look at a process and look at what the problems might be and develop an SOP from one day of sitting back and watching. Like, these are people that have had to jump into unusual circumstances and respond and react and find solutions on their feet. And so just that component alone is enough for, I think, employers to sit back and be like, okay, we gotta bring some in.
Hi, I'm Denise Chaffin, host of Talking TA. And today I have with me Melinda Gomez, who is the manager of veteran initiatives, right, for SEMI Foundation. And I am so honored, Melinda, to have you. So excited about discussing the SEMI Foundation and your role, and also kind of your previous background as well, because you have an amazing background, okay, in a discussion around veteran hiring, working with military, that type of thing. So I will go ahead and turn it over to you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the SEMI Foundation.
Well, thank you for inviting me to be on this with you, Denise. It's been great chatting with you and all the great things around the semiconductor industry, and your background is very impressive as well. So I'm excited for this conversation today. So I've been with a SEMI Foundation for a little over a year now. We just hit my 1 year anniversary. And it's been so interesting and so fun because with the semiconductor industry or microelectronics industry, depending on who you're talking to, and all the investments and attention and just growth that we're seeing in this industry has been really exciting. And being able to tie all of that excitement and new industry opportunity with the military community, which is my passion and has been my career for the last 12 years or so, being able to push all that together has been incredible, and opening these opportunities for our military community and really just kind of getting to pull it all together. Because at the SEMI Foundation, we have initiatives for a lot of different things. We have K-12 programming to meet kids in middle and high school, kind of get them more excited about joining the STEM industry in general, but hopefully more in chips. We're working with community colleges and universities and building out these incredible apprenticeship programs so that we can get job seekers and students into this industry and try to fill all these these anticipated roles that we're expecting to see over the next couple of years. And the military is one piece of that, but we see that as a really important component, and it's going to solve really a lot of these gaps that we're expecting to avoid in the next couple of years.
So talk about that for a second. What kind of gaps do you guys expect to see, and how many positions do you expect that will open up? I mean, this is kind of a really like bright light right now that you're shining here.
It's crazy. So, I mean, the expectation adjusts a little bit as we see more federal investment from the CHIPS and Science Act being poured into companies specifically in certain locations. We're kind of like adjusting that expectation. But in New York, in Arizona, in Ohio, and California, and Michigan, and all these other areas where there's new facilities being built and new federal, and then layering that with state investments and private investment, it's going to be, well over 100,000, new jobs that are going to be here in the U.S. as we reshore and bring some of these manufacturing facilities back from overseas, and just kind of reevaluating where we need to focus our education systems around and what types of programs are going to help us meet that need.
Okay, that's great. So how does the SEMI Foundation then facilitate all of this?
we work with companies specifically. We work with workforce partners. We're working with state, local, and federal government agencies to really, bring all the stakeholders together and make sure that the initiatives that we're envisioning and the programs we're wanting to roll out are going to meet the needs of all of those stakeholders. So in Michigan, for instance, they're working with the Michigan Economic Development Council and working with the companies there on the ground and with the schools and bringing everyone together to make sure that the training they're developing is meeting the needs of those companies and that there's an image and awareness campaign kind of layered in there so that we have the excitement of students and job seekers and, just making sure that we're including all the industry voices so that, we're making programs that are going to be impactful and are going to meet the needs of these companies as they grow.
Okay, so that's a great layer. I think that a lot of us didn't even realize was there. Seriously. So thank you for explaining that. And then your role. Okay, so let's talk about your role then as the manager of veteran initiatives, right? Did I say that right? I'm trying to get your title down correct. Just going back when I looked at your LinkedIn profile, maybe we should start there a little bit so you can kind of fast forward into how you got this role and kind of where you're going to take this position moving forward.
Yeah. So I was married to a Marine when I was young and fresh out of college. And we happened to live overseas where you talk to military families. It's really difficult for military spouses to start their career or advance their career as their family is relocating. And we had young children and all the circumstances around struggles for women in the workplace, which might be another discussion for us to dig down. But we're there. Over there was really eye-opening because I knew I wanted to work in people's services. I wanted to help people. I didn't know if that was through teaching or through coaching or which kind of avenue I wanted to do that in. And I ended up getting a role with the Marine Corps Community Services, which is a federal entity that supports the military families on installations. And I was doing work there supporting families when their service member was deployed or there was crises that were happening in their families and just kind of helping provide assistance and resources and stuff for those families. And when we relocated back to California, I was like, I think I found a little niche here. I think I want to continue serving the military community and continue to work for Marine Corps Community Services and landed in their transition assistance program. So that's a program where it's a federally required program now where service members, when they're in the military, they have to go through these classes as they're leaving active duty to kind of help them develop resumes and recognize what skills and experiences might translate to the civilian world, things like that. And so I was facilitating in some of those classrooms and meeting one-on-one with veterans as they were preparing to leave service. And I loved it. I loved being able to sit down and help someone realize their potential and connect them to resources, and eventually ended up moving over to Hiring Our Heroes, which is an incredible nonprofit. It's a program of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. And over there, I was managing their DoD SkillBridge program for this region. I'm down in San Diego, which is an incredibly vast military community down here of both active duty, veteran, reservists, just all those areas, and a really supportive employer community as well. So lots of employers wanting to engage with the veterans and attract them. And so I was building out kind of programs to help that transition and in getting people new careers as they were leaving. And as much as I loved working there and I still love that organization and get to work with them in my new role, I knew I was ready for a new challenge and seeing this industry kind of starting to bubble up a little bit. And when I saw this role come along, I figured that would be a really great opportunity to kind of pivot a little bit, try something new. And it's just been so exciting. And we've been able to launch military hiring events for the industry. We're working with universities and student veteran populations, holding webinars to try to attract more veterans, connecting them directly to employers. Like, it's been a lot of fun. My short year here so far.
Wow, that's okay. So yeah, you had mentioned too there were like 4 different sections, 4 different objectives that you guys are trying to meet right now. So talk about that in a little more detail.
Yeah, so we have four main goals of what we call our SEMI Vetworks program. And so the first goal is informing companies and organizations about military culture, helping them establish or develop or even expand their military programs. Because some of them, they've just been operating in a normal way of general hiring. And we kind of come in and help them create or develop a strategy around attracting the military community, or maybe they're having trouble with keeping them once they hire them. So we do a lot of workshops or individual meetings and strategy sessions to try to help companies understand and tap into them. And then on the military side, helping them understand what's in the realm of possible in this industry. Sometimes we go on military bases and we're like, we're holding a semiconductor day session. And they're like, what does that mean? So really helping them see all the different types of opportunities, whether it's in engineering or in process and quality and in supply chain. And all of these things are skills and experiences that members of the military community probably have to some degree. They just need a little bit of help translating it or filling a little bit of a skill gap to this industry. And so we're doing a lot of awareness in that regard so that we can try to attract as many veterans into the industry. So that's the second component. The third one is bringing those together. So we bring the companies with us to those bases, or we hold networking events to try to connect them, webinars to veteran service organizations and other nonprofits that have that captive audience of military members that we can talk to and kind of get them up to speed on all the exciting things that are happening in this industry. And then the fourth component is looking at training programs. So there's quite a few training programs already. Manufacturing Institute has a Heroes Make America program around manufacturing. So we like working with them and trying to get graduates of that program into our industry. New York Creates has the Vet Step program. That's a DoD SkillBridge program. So they're able to get trained while they're still in the military. And then we help connect them to member companies for employment opportunities as they graduate that. So just looking at all the different initiatives that are happening, identifying the ones that are doing it really well. The member companies like the skills that these participants are gaining in that, and then helping replicate and scale those so that we can get more people into it and and have more employment opportunities for them.
That's really fascinating. So I have supported the data center industry in the past, and I know that they brought in a lot. They had a lot of military programs as well, because there were a lot of people in the military who met some of the hiring initiatives for cybersecurity and networking and installation of their products and whatnot. So there was a lot of connection there. So this is fascinating, though, to know that also in this other industry for semiconductor, that there is many opportunities then in that industry as well. So this is great. This is absolutely fabulous. The other thing too that you had mentioned was SkillBridge. And I've heard about SkillBridge before. So talk about that a little bit more, because from what I understand, isn't SkillBridge a federal program, right? A federally funded program?
It is. It's a DoD program. And so the way SkillBridge works is during their last 6 months of active duty. So whether a service member is on active duty for 4 years or 25 years, in those last 6 months before they transition out of active duty, they qualify for DoD SkillBridge. And so SkillBridge has so many options right now. I think there's over 5,000 training and employers listed on the DoD SkillBridge website right now. But essentially, a service member would go into that site, look at different training program options. Some of them are internships. Some of them are hands-on training. Some of them can be, at your own speed certifications. Lots of different avenues that they can pursue within SkillBridge. But they get one SkillBridge program that they can participate in. Some of them are as short as 3 or 4 weeks. Others, can take up to that full 6 months. And they can get that experience, that civilian experience or that civilian credential that can help them transition more easily into their new career path. So I work with companies individually to stand up their own SkillBridge programs, or we work with training programs that are already solidified and already have a great, reputation of upskilling and reskilling and help them expand. So companies, if they're not already looking at DoD SkillBridge, I definitely suggest, taking a look at it, see if it's something worthwhile, because there's no cost to the employer to host someone under DoD SkillBridge. That service member is still receiving their full pay and benefits from the military while they're participating. It's basically just, an exposure, an internship, or, training. The goal, of course, is employment. The overall reason the program was rolled out was to help service members transition, number one, but number two, also, cut that unemployment rate a little bit as they're getting out so that they have a softer landing as they're transitioning out. It can be
how do employers then engage with SkillBridge to even become a member or participating company?
Yeah, there's a website. It's dodskillbridge.osd.mil. So they can go on there, and there's a webinar. They do live sessions every 2 weeks, I think, right now, and they can submit to be a DoD SkillBridge partner on there.
That's actually great to know, because I've heard of SkillBridge, but thank you for explaining it in such detail, especially the part where the employees, if you would, or the military personnel then can actually still be paid. They're still on their own pay while they're being trained.
It is contingent on their commander's approval. So that is a tricky part, because the military is seeing lower levels of retention and recruitment right now. So it is a little bit harder for them to let go of certain people because they're already stretched a little bit thin right now. But it's definitely something that's worth exploring if you're trying to build out or expanding your military strategy.
Oh, definitely. And you said that there were about 5,000 companies that are participating so far.
That are listed on there right now. Yeah, it's
incredible.
crazy. It's like exploded over the last couple of years.
That is great. And then hiring our heroes. So I've heard of hiring our heroes, and I did hear that there was like a connection between them and SkillBridge, right?
Yeah. So hiring our heroes has what's called kind of I refer to it as, I don't know if it's an official term, kind of an umbrella approval. So what that means is hiring our heroes holds such a high standard to the companies that they're working with for DoD SkillBridge that any company that works with hiring our heroes kind of gets to use their approval. So the service member is actually getting approval to work with hiring our heroes. Hiring our heroes takes all of the candidates that have, the right approvals and gets them ready for that next step. And then they'll share those resumes with companies that are interested in that area. So then the companies, receive resumes, can kind of filter through, see if anyone meets, what they're looking for, conduct interviews, and then extend SkillBridge offers to them to be able to host them for a 12-week internship. So they're kind of a speedy way to get directly into SkillBridge if you're not sure if you want to take on the whole program yourself. There's such a great resource and an incredible team that can help get companies going in that area.
Oh, certainly. Certainly. It's interesting that you bring this up, because I know that there is a site as well for military and veterans called, I think it's usa.jobs.gov or something like that, right?
USA Jobs, yes.
Yeah, USA Jobs. And so that would then be for the military if they want to stay in as a reservist or whatnot.
Sometimes it can be for reserve roles or National Guard roles or things like that. But in general, USA Jobs is for federal employment. So it can have, roles with Department of Labor. It could be with Department of State. Really, any type of federal role would be listed in usajobs.gov.
Okay. So, well, thank you for explaining that, because I know there's a lot of different avenues. And so if coming in as a new employer, you can sometimes be a little overwhelmed by all of the different, especially when you're talking about different veteran programs, because there are several, right? And so I know Hire Our Heroes is one that's very, very, I guess, well known now. How long have they been around?
They had their 10-year a couple years ago. So I think we're at 13 years or so now. 2011 is when they were founded. Yeah.
So, okay, so yeah, they have been around for a while because I know before that we kind of all relied on like clearancejobs.com to find some of those veterans and whatnot that we were looking for.
Yeah. And I want to plug real quick before I forget the Vetworks program. We have an employer guide for military recruitment, hiring, and retention. So we have a downloadable guide on our website that employers can go in, see all of the different resources depending on what their needs are or where they're feeling like they have gaps, to be able to connect with the right organizations that exist out there. Because there are so many veteran service organizations. I think just in San Diego County, someone told me there's over 150 service organizations out here that are specifically for the military community. So there's definitely a lot of things to weed through and making sure that you're getting a good return on the time that you're putting into it as an employer. But as employers are kind of sitting back and looking at which populations to target, whether they're looking at their DE&I strategies or just looking at their general hiring practices, I think it's a critical component because members of the military community have so many what we call soft skills. My boss called them power skills. I love that term because it's things that can't necessarily be taught. It's leadership skills. It's being able to work in a team, being able to work with a diverse group of people that have all kinds of backgrounds and be able to sit down and problem solve together. Being able to come in and look at a process and look at what the problems might be and develop an SOP from one day of sitting back and watching. Like these are people that have had to jump into unusual circumstances and respond and react and find solutions on their feet. And so just that component alone is enough for, I think employers should sit back and be like, okay, we got to bring some in. There are some statistics that I've heard that the veterans might change jobs more frequently or might come into an organization as they're leaving the military, but then quickly move on to something else. All the findings that I've read is they're actually doing that a whole lot less than their civilian counterparts, especially these younger generations who tend to change jobs at least every 2 years. And so they're actually going to come in with a sense of loyalty and service and mission focus that I don't think you'll find in a lot of other populations. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention military spouse component, a little bit impartial to that. But I think our military spouse community is such a resilient group, and a lot of military spouses have had to change jobs based on where they're at and what's available and what their spouse is doing. And I don't think that is an issue that the general population might have to deal with, is having to fill a lot of different roles and adjust. And the military spouse population is estimated to be about 25% unemployed. And so in this economy, and looking at our national security even, it is an issue that needs to be addressed. And there's a lot of things that employers could do to better support military spouses, whether that's with flexible working situations or relocation ability. If they're a larger company, there's a lot of things that could happen to make that just a little bit easier for our military spouses.
Well, let me ask you a question about that. Because I know that one of the data center companies I supported in the past had a military spouse program. They actually called it Pathways. And it was for military spouses. When they were hiring the person who had a veteran or the person coming out of the military, they were actually helping that spouse to find work and setting them up with that program so that as the one person was being hired, the spouse or partner, whatever, was able to then follow along and be able to have interviews set up and have some meaningful work when he or she joined the. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think with the rise in returnship programs and other initiatives, it's military spouses have been kind of able to grab the tailwind of that. But it's definitely, I mean, they're more likely to be higher educated and there's just a lot of statistics. So I would encourage employers, that's also in my little guidebook, some different resources on ways to engage with.
Vetworks guide. Okay. And then how would they find that?
That is on the SEMI Foundation website. So even if you were to Google SEMI Foundation Vetworks, that should be the first thing that pops up for you.
SEMI Foundation Vetworks. Okay, this is really great to know. I mean, and for those of us in talent acquisition working with our clients to be able to share this information with clients who may not be aware of it, because I can guarantee you, Melinda, there's a lot of people not aware of this. You know what I mean? Even though there are 5,000 companies that are part of SkillBridge, I mean, how many companies do we have here in the United States? A lot more than 5,000. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And a lot of those might not be able to participate regularly, if they are going through different hiring needs and stuff. So,
wow. So what are some of the obstacles that you are encountering right now? And
I think the biggest piece right now is still just around industry awareness. So in the military community, there's just not a lot of recognition around what types of careers, what that could look like. So just having a broader campaign in that regard. We have a career site. It's careers.semi.org it was designed for job seekers and students in general, but we do have a specific track on there for members of the military where they can go in, put their military occupation in there, and it'll make projections or recommendations on what types of careers they could experience in the semiconductor industry. So there's a lot of cool tools like that we're trying to just get out there more. So getting on military bases, doing webinars, doing things with partners like Hiring Our Heroes or Heroes Make America to try to get in front of as many people as possible to kind of open that aperture for them a little bit. But that's probably the biggest piece, is just making sure that we're able to get out there. Over 160,000 service members transition every single year. Our goal is to reach at least half of them to at least know this is a viable option for them and that they should look at it. How many of them want to join or will join? Can't control that, but at least they'll know. At least they'll know it's an option, and hopefully.
So that's bringing up a couple questions for me then. With 160,000 military employees transitioning, I guess that's what I would call them, right? Military service. How do I refer to them? Military employees.
Personnel.
Personnel. Thank you. Personnel. I don't know. It just sounds like such an.
That sounds funny, huh? Yeah.
I know. Yeah. But how many of those people are here in the States when they transition, or how many of them are abroad?
Yeah. So it varies from year to year. It does. There are statistics that come out like 9 months or so after the end of each year, where they kind of break it down by like military base, who's getting out, where they're going, things like that. But I would say probably at least 80% of them are transitioning from the U.S. And so, they'll be, say, here in San Diego, will transition. In all likelihood, they're relocating somewhere else once they transition. So that's a big life change on its own. If they're coming from overseas, that's just such a big challenge. If they're in Germany or they're in Japan, and they're conducting, their transition classes, they're getting ready to get out, they might come back to the States, a month or two before they officially are out of the military to complete their out processing and do their final move. But that's still, a couple thousand people, tens of thousands of people that are having to do that, probably with families and with a lot of things. So, definitely, need to make a concerted effort to connect with those who are overseas and trying to transition and relocate back here. But really, I want to say it's something like 70% of them are going to be relocating after they transition.
Sure, that's my figure.
Yeah, it's quite a few. So whether it's across an ocean or across the country, it's a big change for them, and a lot of things, kind of have to line up all at once.
So who handles the logistics for them when they're relocating? Is that something that the military offers their personnel?
Yeah. So there is, they have, what is it? Defense Logistics, DLA, acquisition, something like that.
So in other words, so if I was a company,
help relocate all of that.
I was going to say, so if I was a company and I wanted to hire somebody who's in Germany, for example, and he or she has a family there as well,
Yeah.
And so we're going to bring that person back stateside in 2 months for a position that they're going to start. So then the military, then whatever branch they're working for, is going to handle the relocation for that person and their whole family?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. See, that's
Yeah.
great to know. That is
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
information because the logistics of moving people, of relocation, is
It
huge.
is. There is one little caveat to that is that typically that relocation is back to what they consider their home of record. So, for instance, if they're in California and they're originally from Nevada, that's really as far as they will relocate them to. So if they decided they wanted to live in North Carolina, they would have to pay the difference
Okay.
to get all the way to North Carolina.
Still, though, I
So
mean,
they're not just left at the gate. but yeah, it is
okay, so
somehow.
I have to dive into that one a little bit further because we relocate so many people in this business. And there are some companies that offer what they call lump sum benefits now.
Right.
And it doesn't matter who that person is. They'll just offer them a lump sum. Or some companies, especially bigger companies, will offer a full relocation package, right? Including the house hunting trips and all that fun stuff. So when you are moving somebody then back to their home state, does that person have to go back to that home state? Or can they go to the new place where they're going to be working and then just pay that difference? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. They can just cover the difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
And there are some exceptions for the district,
Right.
but yeah.
Wow. Okay, well, this is good to know because I think, and another question I have for you too, you mentioned this military guide for employers, and I'm sure would that type of information be on there?
It is in one of the resources to, which one is it? Because you'll find like little paragraphs on there and then a whole bunch of resources.
Oh,
It is one of the resources listed in there.
okay, got it. So if I'm an employer, then I can just go ahead and go to the military guide under, and let's go ahead and say that one again because I have it written down here. It's under SEMI Vetworks.
Yes.
And then it's going to pull up that military guide and it's going to give me kind of the how to. Does that also include then how to hire our heroes?
It does. It does.
Okay.
It has all that information on there. And as someone in talent acquisition, I would also suggest looking at SHRM Foundation has a Veterans at Work certification that you can get for free. It's an incredible curriculum that kind of walks through all the different components of military culture. There's little videos and quizzes and stuff, and a lot of resources on there as well, and best practices shared from other companies. So that's the SHRM Foundation Veterans at Work certification.
Certification.
That you
Okay,
can go
thank you for that.
for free.
Well, like we've been talking about, there are just so many different avenues. So kind of
How
having
many?
a central point of reference might not be as intimidating and overwhelming to an employer to go in and research this type of information. So going back to the SEMI Foundation then, because I think that it's important to just kind of, bring up again, what your role is going to be and what you're kind of like, what's your roadmap ahead for what you're, proposing right now?
Right now, a lot of our work is kind of being driven or directed by some of the bigger companies and what their needs are. So we have a working group of recruiters and people in talent acquisition at some of these big, small companies across the country so that we can hear what their needs are, where they're seeing gaps, where they're seeing opportunities, because some of them are close to other military installations. They're like, hey, there's events happening over here, or this is what we're seeing. And so bringing those voices together is always really important to help drive what we're doing next. And so pushing out larger image and awareness campaign, doing speaking opportunities with other veteran service organizations is going to be a big piece, because organizations like Hiring Our Heroes, they have that captive audience. They are a trusted source. And so we want to be trusted as well in this community. So we want to make sure that we're getting employment statistics out there and in hirings and all the opportunities so that we can become a leader in that area as well.
Oh yeah, and a huge valued partner. I just again, I think it's a layer that a lot of us weren't aware of that was there, what Semi Foundation is providing. So this is really a great conversation. One other thing that you mentioned was hire heroes make America.
Yes. Yeah. So Heroes Make America, that's a program of Manufacturing Institute. And they have 5, maybe 6 now, different training programs across the country at military installations. They train people in mechatronics, in logistics, in project management. And, they do such a great job of getting that hands-on training, whether they're a transitioning service member or a veteran needing employment, and then helping connect them to employment opportunities. So tomorrow, actually, we're doing a webinar with them. We have 4 companies that will be joining me to talk about, different career opportunities that these students should be aware of, and help connect them to careers and chips. So
Now,
they're a great organization.
when you say students, though, you're talking
Students of the Heroes Make America program.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So they can be military personnel, but they're just students of this particular program.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Well, also other veterans too, but
Yeah, other veterans as well. Other
yeah.
veterans as well. Anything that we haven't covered, do you think? Because I mean, this we've talked about a lot, but there's so much to discuss. I want to make sure that we've at least hit on some of the key points here. You also had brought up the fact too earlier, and I had a note here that I wanted to add. Oh, the DEI goals. A lot of companies consider hiring veterans part of their DEI initiatives or DEI goals for the year.
Yeah. I think some easy first steps that a company could look at as they're looking at their strategy or their goals for the year, and wanting to incorporate more veterans into that, or members of the military community in general. You could look at what local military bases are near you. A lot of them will offer career fairs that you could join and kind of get your company out there, even just kind of get a feel for it. That could be a great way to do that. If you reach out to some of these veteran service organizations that we've talked about, they can get you connected so that you can start seeing just a sampling. Because I guarantee once you meet with a couple, if you haven't had a lot of experience with veterans or with military spouses, you meet a couple, you start learning about their backgrounds. And there's so many different types of backgrounds. You're not going to see the same one twice, but you will be impressed. You will want to continue. And I think it's just a great way to give back to the community, get your company's name out there, and also get some great talent. So there's lots of ways that you could be engaging with the military community and hitting those marks.
Oh, that's fabulous. There's some companies I know that actually have as part of their talent acquisition organization military programs, and somebody who they've hired from the military to help them connect all the dots in that arena, which I think is fabulous for companies who can do that. Right?
Yeah, and leveraging, a lot of companies have employee resource groups or business unit groups, and, having one dedicated to members of the military community and their allies or supporters is a great way of kind of bringing that together, making sure that their voices are heard. Celebrating, their service is a great way to attract and keep military members in your organization.
I remember years ago, I was working for a couple of the DoD companies. This is going back a ways, Motorola, and then another one called Microtronics that is now part of Raytheon. And their goal was at the time to hire people with security clearances. And so I would imagine for some of those companies out there who do need to hire people with security clearances, because I think they're good for 2 years, right? After somebody leaves active duty. I think that's what it is.
It depends. So if they had a top secret clearance, it's for a certain number of time. If it depends on the level of clearance and the last time they were renewed.
Okay, got it. All right. But still, though, I think there's a transition, though, for companies, civilian companies, or maybe DoD
for
companies
sure.
that need to
They're
hire
more likely to have it and likely to be more clearance eligible.
Yeah,
they need to
exactly.
renew.
I remember that was huge for us. This is back a long time ago. Before this was actually a conversation, but we didn't, there was such a need that we were always looking for military and doing career fairs at the military bases, which were phenomenal because the military bases, they welcomed you with such open arms to hire their transitioning personnel like that.
Yeah.
So, and one other question too I have before we close, on the reservist side, are there any special rules around hiring reservists?
There isn't so much rules. There is USERRA, so there's guidelines around members of the Reserve or National Guard community and some of their rights, which basically says if they're in the reserves or in the National Guard and they have to go for training, one employer should keep their job open for them. Never that I can recall anyway, ever seen a company have any issues with any of that. But the reserve community is a big focus of ours as well. Thank you for bringing that up. A lot of our events this year are going to be held at reserve installations or National Guard bases because so many of them are doing the jobs of someone who's on active duty in regards to, like, if they're an aircraft technician or a mechanic. They're doing that part-time, but a lot of times they're doing something completely unrelated in their normal careers. So they usually have two careers at one time. And the semiconductor industry has so many opportunities where it could kind of merge that a little bit and maybe have more growth potential for them. So that's definitely an area that we target and see so many great skills and experiences come out of. Because some people go straight into the Guard or reserves and don't go into the active duty component first. Others will be active duty for 4 or 8 years and then transition to the Guard and reserves. So it's definitely a very skilled and talented pool.
Yeah, definitely. This is fascinating and so enlightening. Thank
Top
you
forever.
so much. Yeah, no. Oh, yeah. And I think that, we could have further follow-on conversations. Yeah, and I thank you so much for all of this information. I'm just trying to, in my head, did I cover everything? So, yeah, I think we've covered a lot of good points, though, during this particular conversation. And we can, definitely, have a follow-on call at any point in time. So, yeah, and I appreciate, too, you kind of directing anybody who's listening to some of these different sites and whatnot. And if somebody, of course, wants to get in touch with you, they can always connect with you on LinkedIn, I would imagine. Yeah. So, Melinda, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. This has been a great conversation.
Yes, it has. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.